Hey everyone, hi, I'm Betsy Schacht. I work with WSU, if you don't already know me. I'm going to first run through here just a quick, in case you haven't gotten on the mobile app, in case you need another quick tutorial if you just got here. So I have my screen shared up here, and obviously I have an Apple phone, but once you get into the browser and you're on the mobile app, down here, second from the bottom, is where you're going to find your primary, but the most important thing is the agenda. And you can see it's kind of a messy list here, but if you go up on the top right, there's a pull-down menu for tracks. We've got it split up a variety of different ways. So if you're interested in blueberry talks, you can filter by that and see all of them. Or obviously pesticide credits are very important. So we have Oregon and Washington pesticide credits that you can sort by. And then also really important, if you saw all our signs about these Woods coffee cards, we're really interested in your feedback about the talks and about the conference. And so we have it set up so you can win a $5 gift card to Woods Coffee if you enter a review. And so if you open the information for whatever talk you actually go to, then, sorry about that, you can see there's a little blue link that says leave a review. You follow that link, and once your browser loads, you pull up this very simple little feedback, and down at the bottom here, if you leave your email, you'll be entered to win one of those gift cards. So let us know if you have any questions about that, because we really want to make this new app work, because it's super helpful for us. We can update information quickly and get everyone on the same page for what's going on. All right. So, okay, now we're going to actually get started with the stuff you're interested in. So I'd like to bring up Dr. Tom Walters of Walters Ag Research. He's going to talk to us about raspberry pre-plant fumigation strategies.
Okay. Good afternoon. Hi. Is the volume too much? Too little? It's good? All right. Thanks. Well, I'm going to be talking about the work today, but I'm certainly not the only person that did this work. This is a project funded by the Red Raspberry Commission, and the folks who worked on it, other than me, are Inga Zasada from the USDA, Jerry Weiland from USDA, and Lisa DeVetter, who we all know at WSU. Let's see here. So if you're a raspberry grower, you already know why you fumigate, but if you're not a raspberry grower, you might wonder, well, why would a raspberry grower bother to do something that's so expensive? And the short answer is that we have a couple of very hard to manage soil-borne disease pests. We have diseases like raspberry root rot caused by Phytophthora rubi, and we have plant parasitic nematodes, most notably root lesion nematodes. Weeds, perennial weeds, can be really troublesome in raspberry plantings, and pre-plant fumigation is a good way to set those back. So I'm going to talk today about 3 different strategies that we tried to help growers get more effective pre-plant fumigations. Standard method that growers have used for pre-plant fumigation has been, you call the custom fumigator in and they do a broadcast deep shank application of some combination of Telone, 1,3-D, and chlorpicrin. And that's worked for growers for a number of years. but regulations have changed, those needs have changed, and we're finding that that system isn't always working out well for us as we like. So people have been trying a number of new strategies, and with this project, we wanted to get a good idea of how well these are working. The first of these three that I'm going to talk about are VAPAM caps, and it's not the little cap that says VAPAM, although those are great. A VAPAM cap is when you would do a shallow injection of VAPAM, usually with shanks that inject at about 5 and 10 inches below the surface. And you would do that either alone or on top of a deep shanked telone application. It's relatively inexpensive. I mean, we're talking about materials costs of something like $400 per acre. That doesn't sound so inexpensive, but it is compared to having a custom applicator come in and apply telone chloropicrin. It can be very effective in the right circumstances. And what we wanted to try and get a handle on are how does it work in different soil types where we think that the nematodes are likely to be distributed differently. And the reason we think that is that Inga Zasada had done some previous work doing deep cores, which she found that in our sandy loam soil, most of the nematodes tend to be clustered in the upper 12 inches of the soil. In silt loams, the nematodes can go much, much deeper, as deep as we can core. We can core down to 3, maybe 4 feet, and they go down that far. And so we were wondering, well, does this cap, is this effective in both these circumstances or only when the nematodes are in this shallow depth? So that's what we were after. So we hunted around for a couple of fields to do this in. And this slide here is showing, this is Inga, by the way, she's actually doing the work. I'm just taking a picture, which is fine by me. She's taking deep cores. These are going down to about 3.5 feet. And then she took those samples back to the lab, and she got readings of the Pradalenchus penetrans up to 6 inches, from 6 to 12 inches, and so on, down to about 42 inches. And we've got those results from 2 fields. One, this field was on Pole Road. This is a really sandy, almost a gravelly soil. And the second one, this is on Cyper Road. This is further to the east, off of Highway 9, where the soil is much more of a silt loam. What you can see here is that, you know, just as Inga had predicted, in the sandy soil, most of the nematodes are in that upper 12 inches. In the silt loam, those nematodes are present as deep as we can go. So they're there, you know, all over the place. So these became the 2 fields that we did this study in. So in each of these fields, we applied 4 different treatments. An untreated check, Strike 60, which is a commercial product that is more or less 40% telone and 60% chloropicrin. That would be a standard application. And then we applied a VAPAM cap alone and in combination with the Strike 60. So we applied that in September of 2017. The fields were left to lay there. Grower planted the crops in there the following spring. And in July, when those first year plants were growing, we came back and did deep cores once again. The idea being we were going to see where the nematodes were now. And these bars look really short because I intentionally left the scale to be the same scale as they were in the first slide that you saw. And so you can see at Pole Road, remember, that's the sandy one. We don't have a lot of nematodes, and the ones that we do are only down to 12 inch depth. There's hardly any nematodes further down. So the numbers are low, and they're only there in shallow depths. At Cyper Road in July, the nematodes, where'd they go?
We don't know.
We were really surprised by this. We have yet to figure it out. In September, we came through and we did soil samples. pretty much just down to 12 inches. We also did root samples. By this time, the plants are big enough. We can take root samples without damaging the plants. And the first thing you can see is that at Cypher Road, once again, we have no nematodes. We went back to this field. We sampled in areas around the place where we had sampled. We haven't found any nematodes yet. So for some reason that we don't yet understand, we don't have nematodes in this silt loam soil again. But we're going to keep following this one. At Pole Road, that's the sandy one, what we found is, first of all, you can see patterns pretty much the same between the soil samples and the root samples. In the untreated check, we have really high populations of root lesion nematodes on those roots already, in the planting year. When we had the Strike 60 deep application, we did have some nematodes that trickled through that, and that's pretty typical. We often see that with a field that's deep fumigated. The shallower parts of the soil don't get treated as effectively as the deep parts of the soil, and some do trickle through. What we did see was that with the Vapam caps, we essentially eliminated all or nearly all of the nematodes. So the one thing that we do know from this is that when we have a sandy soil like we did at Pole Road, Vapam caps work extremely well. We also took a look at the plant vigor here. We looked at two aspects of that. How many primocanes did we have per hill? And on average, how long were those primocanes? This is a really, really fun job that I would recommend you do with long sleeves on. They get kind of tangly. Looking at the primocanes per hill, there's no significant differences between the different treatments, either at Pole Road, which is the green bars, or at Cypher Road, which is the blue bars. There is a slight trend, you could say, for the fumigated plots to be more vigorous than the non-fumigated plots in both those places. And then if we looked at primocane height, how long those primocanes are, that trend is a little bit more pronounced at Cypher. We don't yet have the heights for Pole Road. So what we're seeing there is that there's a general benefit of fumigating as far as vigor goes. It's not an enormous benefit at this point, but it is generally there. And you can see, again, that the Vapam treatments perform really well. So the second thing that we decided to look at was bed fumigation. Those of you who are raspberry growers know that there's been a lot of bed fumigation that Trident's done with their rig. And we wanted to work with Trident to see, what are ways that we can make bed fumigation work as well as it possibly can. Bed fumigation's got a lot of advantages. For one thing, the fumigant is injected as the beds form. So the fumigant is going in exactly the place where the plant is going to be planted. You're not wasting fumigant on alleyways that you're not going to be planting in. Only the bed is fumigated. You may know that last year we had a shortage again of 1,3-D, the main ingredient of tellone. It was hard to get enough tellone to fumigate fields. And with bed fumigation, you're using quite a lot less tellone. Buffers are reduced. For those of you in the States, you have to deal with EPA's regulations on buffers. Bed fumigation is a great way to get around that. By the way, this is Lisa DeVetter. You'll notice that she is working, and I'm once again taking a picture. Suits me. Well, what we decided to look at with bed fumigation was we decided to look at the depth of the shanks. With Trident's rig, they can pretty easily adjust the depth of the shanks. The idea was that by putting the shanks a little deeper, maybe we would alter the pattern of the fumigant dispersal. We were concerned if they went deep that we might not get enough fumigant in the upper part of the beds. But we didn't really know. And then we also want to take a look at what's the benefit of applying an impermeable tarp.
With lever.
So we set up this study where we compared, we had 8 beds that were provided to us by the grower, and 4 of them we fumigated with Strike 60. That's the product that's about 60% chlorpicrin, the rest is Telone, and then with C35, which is the inverse product, where about 35% of it is chlorpicrin and the rest of it is Telone. So what you can see here is looking at the rates with the Strike 60, these beds are getting more chlorpicrin in them. With the C35, those beds are getting more Telone in them. So just remember that. Then, for all of those beds, we have a section where we tarped. We put on these impermeable tarps over the bed. These were donated by Raven. Then we had a non-tarp section for comparison, and then a non-tarp section where we had the shanks deeper. Not a lot deeper. It's only 2 inches of depth.
Sure.
So we did those fumigations in fall of 2017 and April of 2018 before planting happened. We removed the tarps. We let the tarps stay on over the winter. And we did weed counts in these plots.
Dug in?
And no big surprise, right? If you have a tarp covering a bed, you have a lot less weeds than if you don't have a tarp covering the bed. Well, that's not really rocket science. The other thing that was really surprising that came out of this was that in the deep shank treatments, we had much lower weed counts than we did with the shanks in their usual position. And again, this is only a difference of a couple inches of depth, but since the Telone in these products is fairly volatile, we think that it may be that by putting those shanks deep, the Telone stays in the soil a little bit longer and gets at those weed seeds a little bit better. Keep this picture in your mind because you're going to see it again. So in October this year, we also looked at vigor. This is again same measurements that we did for the VPEM cap trials: primocane per hill, primocane height. And here, the only significant difference is we have more primocanes per hill in the plots where we did a tarp fumigation. Now, I was a little bit surprised to see that because these tarps were gone before we planted plants in the field. So the tarps are not like warming the soil the way they do when you have tarps present when you have things planted. That effect was long gone by the time the plants hit the ground. What this is a result of is that a fumigation that was more effective. So we have a measurable difference in the efficacy of this fumigation compared to a non-tarped one. Primocane height, really no significant differences there. It's kind of all over the place. Looking at the nematode results from October, again, after the first year of growth in the field, these are the soil levels and these are the root levels, and they look a lot like each other, right? The normal has a lot more nematodes than the tarped. And then once again, just like in the weed situation, the nematode numbers are a lot lower when we have the shanks mounted deeper. This is something that we definitely want to look at again. We want to see if this is a repeatable thing or if it's just a consequence of what happened on that day in that field. But we hope that by simply moving those shanks down a little bit, we may be able to really improve the efficacy of these bed fumigations. The other thing I want to show you here is look at the difference in the normal non-tarp between the Strike 60 fumigated plots and the C35 fumigated plots. These Strike 60, remember, is mostly chlorpicrin. which doesn't really affect nematodes very much. It's mostly good against soil-borne disease. C35, it's mostly 1,3-D, which is highly effective against nematodes. So the fumigant that you use matters, right? If you have a field where you know you're dealing with a high nematode population, be sure to get enough telone in the mix. If you have a field, on the other hand, where you know you have a real phytophthora problem, be sure you get enough chlorophyllin in the mix. And again, we were much more effective when we tarped the applications than when we didn't. Tarps are hard though. Tarps are expensive, right? And they're a hassle to remove. And they really slow down the fumigators. That bed fume rig could probably run at 3-4 miles an hour. If you put a tarp layer behind it, it's probably going to run at around half that speed. So tarps change a lot of things, but they have a lot of benefits. The last thing I want to talk to you about is crop termination. So we know that we fumigate because in a lot of the fields that we have high pest populations left over from the old crop. And we know that reducing these populations makes fumigation more effective. That's why when you call a custom fumigator in, one of the first things that they recommend to you is letting that field lie for a year before they fumigate, so things can break down and the pest populations can be reduced. What we wanted to know here was, can we terminate the crop with Vapam and reduce the nematode populations ahead of fumigation? So to do this, we found a field that a grower very graciously let us play around in. It had very heavy Pretilencus penetrans pressure, and we applied Vapam at the full rate, 74 gallons per acre through drip tape. And we put that in a half inch of water. It's kind of interesting. We originally tried using the grower's tape that was already in the field, cutting off the sections and reusing them. But water wasn't flowing correctly. And so before I injected the Vapam, I sliced the tape open, which you can see there. And those of you who have sliced open T-tape know that it's not supposed to be brown on the inside, right? That's not usually a very good sign. And then the fact that the flow rate in this was about half of what it should be, it's also saying we had some real emitter plugging problems. So this happened to be a field where there was iron water and there was a lot of emitter plugging. So if you're considering doing any kind of chemigation towards the end of a cycle of a field, check your emitters first because it can make a big difference. So I ran out to the store, bought some new tape, and we finished the application. You can see results of this really fast. Within like 5 days, you can see the difference. What we have here is this is an untreated check. These are plots that are treated with Vapam only. These are plots that were treated with herbicide only, and these were treated with both Vapam and herbicide. The little up and down line here is here because these are replicated and these are not. So statistically, we can make comparisons here, and this is just for reference only. Up on the y-axis, this is the percent of green foliage, how green the things are. So higher bar means greener plant. So what we saw was that with the Vapam, we did reduce the amount of green foliage quite a lot by 11 days after treatment, and even measurably 5 days after treatment. But where the grower had applied herbicide, Roundup and Crossbow, it did the same thing in that about the same amount of time. And then where we applied both, it accelerated it. And that's what this is. This is with Roundup and Crossbow only. This is with Vapam as well. So it really torched the plant fast. So we were all excited at this point. We're thinking, oh, this is great. This is going to really, bash those nematodes. Well, we were wrong. This is Pretilencus penetrans per gram root at 2 different times. The green bars are on raspberry roots just after treatment, about a month after treatment. And the blue bars are on the wheat cover crop roots the following spring. And Yeah, we kind of sort of reduced the number of nematodes on the wheat root. You know, this is just ahead of the fumigation that was going to ultimately happen there. But you know what? You could reduce the nematodes just as well with the herbicide treatments. In a situation like that where the nematodes have to survive over the winter, just applying those herbicides made a huge difference in the nematode survival. So the take-home messages on this are that the Vapam cap worked very well where we could evaluate it, which was a sandy loam soil where the nematodes were in the upper part of the soil. Jury's still out on that Cypher Road field where we don't know why the nematodes haven't come back as quickly as we thought they would. Tarps and possibly deeper shanks seem like they're promising for bed fumigation, and that at least as we tried it this past year, crop termination with Vapam didn't show us much benefit that we couldn't have gotten by treating the old crop with an herbicide. If I've got a few minutes, I'll be happy to take questions. Yes, Eric. So the question is, are we going to assess how well those plants stayed dead after crop termination? You know, I didn't see any new plants coming up in the field after the crop termination. So the field was disked down, and then shortly after that time, the grower planted a wheat cover crop. We didn't see any new plants coming up in the wheat cover crop. And then the grower went, they made their beds, and they actually put plastic mulch over their beds after fumigation. So we're probably not going to see a lot of new plants coming up. So I think the short answer is no.
I'm very intrigued, Tom, with the deep shanking, apparently controlling weeds a little bit better on your site.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what were the weeds that came through? Did you notice any difference between the treatments? Or were they the same species, or were you dealing with annuals or perennials, or what was going on?
The weeds that we saw in that April post-fumigation, they were mostly annual weeds. There was a lot of chickweed there, some annual grasses there, and that was about 90% of the weeds that we saw. That was what was accounting for most of the counts. I'm sure the perennial weeds will be with us shortly. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.